Hope and Patience with Amelia Rope, a podcast about business, well-being and chocolate.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Hope and Patience. Just to give you the heads up that our special edition H&P chocolate bar, my fave milk, lemon and sea salt recipe, is being made and should be ready very soon. The good news is that it's free. The bad news is that you'll just have to win it. So keep an eye out on our social or subscribe to our newsletter to be in with a chance to win a bar or maybe two. Our guest today is Phyllis Cohen, the founder of Face Lace. She and her team design and create dramatic, evocative and sexy ready-to-wear face makeup. To quote Phyllis, exploding eye candy, which has attracted 72,000 homegrown followers on Instagram. With no formal makeup training, Phyllis has worked with photographers such as David Bowie, to name just one, celebrities the likes of the late David Bowie, Lady Gaga, Kylie Minogue, Katy Perry, Dame Kelly Holmes, Annie Lennox, the Rolling Stones, editorials including Vogue, Dazed and Confused, and commercially with the V&A, Mac and Pink Floyd, to name just a few. So you get the idea, she works with big names. Looking after her 102-year-old father-in-law, her hubby and one of her children whilst keeping her business on the road is quite a challenge, and I'm hugely grateful to have Phyllis here with us today. So it's time to welcome to H&P, Phyllis.
Hi, Amelia. Thank you very much for inviting me on here. I'm really excited to have this chat with you. And it makes me remember the first time we met, which was also quite an interesting occasion.
It was, Phyllis, wasn't it? In the House of Commons, defending our IP against cheeky copy artists to the MPs. Lobbying we were doing, weren't we?
Yeah. Invited for lunch, no less. It was very interesting. It was very interesting.
IP is so important, isn't it? I mean, it's really what your brand is about.
Definitely.
So, Phyllis, you founded Face Lace, I think, in 2012.
Exactly.
Could you tell us all about where the creation of Face Lace came from? I mean, was it always your dream?
It was something that was sort of bubbling in the back of my brain for quite a long time. And it sort of kept popping up every once in a while. So I originally started off as a fashion illustrator. And at the time where I graduated from art school, there wasn't really that much fashion illustration happening. So the model agencies used to send their new models to the school to get photographs done by the fashion photography students. And I used to do makeup for them. Just by doing that, by the time I left Art Center, I had two portfolios, one for illustration and one for makeup work. So in 1982, I decided to leave Los Angeles because the kind of illustration I was doing and the kind of makeup I was doing was a bit too creative for what was going on in California at the time. Mm-hmm. And even for New York, the stuff I was doing was too wild. But people were very good about seeing me. I saw a lot of beauty editors for like American Elle. And I remember she was really supportive. It gave me this long list of people to contact when I got to Milan, which was my next stop. So with those names, I arrived in Milan, and one of the first people I went to see was Franca Sozani. She really liked what I was doing. She liked both my illustration and my makeup, and she said, listen, I would like to give you an editorial. You can do whatever you want. You can do illustration, you can do makeup. So I stayed in Milan for about 8 months, and then I came to London because in August, everything basically closes down in Milan. So I thought, well, let me go to London and see what's happening there. And I never went back to Milan. I just stayed in London because I really loved it here. And I love the individuality that people have in England. And I really love that England, I think, really celebrates the eccentric. And I just love that about England and always will. I remember being on the tube and there'd be like a punk with one of these rainbow mohawks that was like up in the air, like 2 feet, sitting next to someone that looked like my grandma. I just went to look at
I
this
remember
and go,
that sort of Mohican
yeah,
time, and sort
exactly.
of chains and tartan
Yeah,
kilts, and it was real
yeah,
sort of punk rock, wasn't it?
exactly. And I just thought, wow, that's just so amazing, that this coexists and that it's completely fine. And so, yeah, I thought, well, this is the place for me. And I did actually arrive just at the time of the New Romantics. People like Steve Strange,
Hmm.
he had a band called Visage who had the hit song Fade to Grey, which came out just before I arrived. But he was really a big deal, and he was incredibly well connected. And I did some makeup on him, and he kind of spread the word just because he just was one of those people that used his influence to help anyone who he felt had some talent. So from then I started to work with Annie Lennox, Boy George, and the whole Blitz crowd became kind of aware of me, and they did a feature on me in Blitz magazine, which of course is no longer going. Blitz was the famous nightclub, which was just a hive of creativity, of the eccentric. And a lot of great people came out of that era. People like Stephen Jones, the milliner, Boy George, of course, lots and lots of DJs and other musicians, and David Bowie went there, and tons of people. It was a fantastically creative time, and little by little I began to get more and more attention. And there were a few key people that really helped me at the beginning. One of them was a fashion editor called Harriet Jagger. She was working for the Observer Extra, which is the weekend supplement that comes, on the weekend with your giant newspaper.
Hmm.
And she asked me to work with Stephen Jones, a fantastic milliner. And he said, well, I would quite like to do something very monochromatic. And Robin Beach had the idea of doing a makeup where the shadows were painted on rather than created by light.
Hmm.
So we did this. The Observer magazine, they really liked this image, and they put posters of it all over town. And this was the image that David Bowie saw when he asked me to work on his Jazzing for Blue Jean video. And he felt it was really relevant. When he thought about his past, all the past characters that he did, Ziggy Stardust and Aladdin Sane and Pinups and all those, really extreme versions of himself, that he felt like that was a sort of shadow of his former self. And that's why he wanted to use this shadow makeup to describe this new character that he was developing for his Jazzing for Blue Jean, a screaming Lord Byron. And of course, that was a really fantastic experience to work on that. And he was incredibly patient and kind, and realized the first time we met and I did the first trial of the makeup, I was really nervous. I was like 25 years old. He was my idol. It was just me and him in a hotel room, me doing this makeup, and he was just incredibly sweet. And then he approved it. It was used for the video, and yeah, so that was probably the greatest highlight in terms of a celebrity experience that I had in my career. Just amazing.
Yeah, must have been unbelievable. So how did that all feed into creating Face Lace?
Yes. Okay. There's a few different strands. Okay. So in the 80s, I started to do it's called Keying the Makeup Show. So I started to do this with Xander Rhodes probably in about 1984. And because my makeup style was incredibly detailed, it was impossible for me to do detailed makeup on 20 models in sort of like 3 hours. So I used to make these stick-on makeup designs out of colored latex, and I'd add in beads and like rhinestones, and they were quite elaborate. So I did that for quite a few years. And I remember even at that point, a buyer from, I think it was like from Saks Fifth Avenue, came backstage to find me and said, could you sell those things? And I'm like, oh my God, no, because they take like 4 hours each, so like, no, I'm not selling them. But that idea stuck. Like fast forward like 20 years later, I started to see that people were cutting up bits of material and sticking them on people again for the fashion shows. And one of the big challenges I had was to do a poster for Pink Floyd,
Wow.
which was the back catalog poster where they wanted 6 models' backs painted with 6 images of their best-selling album covers. And the thing was, I had been working with an amazing art director called Storm Thorgerson, who started the design company Hypnosis. Anyways, he came to me and he said, Phyllis, this is what I want you to do. I want you to paint 6 backs as the 6 best-selling album covers for Pink Floyd. But we have a problem. And the problem is that the location we found, we only have it for 8 hours. So I can only give you 6 hours to paint these 6 backs. And I went and I thought, oh
Wow.
my God, how am I going to do this? So I thought, if I could make like stencils for each layer of color, for each like image that could be overlaid, a bit like a silkscreen process, then I could probably, reduce the time. And we did it. We did the back catalog, which is, I think, quite a well-known image in 6 hours.
It's a very cool image, listeners. You've got to check it out because it is a very cool image.
But then the stencil thing became something that I was known for. I became known for being able to do these body paintings that were really elaborate in a very short space of time. But I was spending all my time cutting these stencil layers by hand. And then I discovered there was a machine that could do it. And I was like, oh my God. And so I started to use this machine and create even more intricate stencils. And so, okay, that was one sort of avenue of where I was making these very intricate shapes. And then as well, I was seeing on the catwalk at the end of the 90s and early noughties that people were beginning to cut things up and stick them on models' faces again for the fashion shows. And these things kind of dovetailed together. And in about probably around 2005, I started to play around myself with, cutting things up and using my machine. And finally, in around 2010, I thought, okay, I'm going to try to do some research and figure out if this is a possibility to make intricate makeup designs that can be just lifted off and applied to the skin for like instant, like wow makeups. It took about a year of experimentation, and finally I worked it out and made my first collection in February of 2012. And we launched it on the back of a fashion show. So, interesting how things always come full circle around.
Yeah, that is an incredible story of your journey to Face Lace. Phyllis, what do you think your greatest challenge has been to date, and what did you learn from it?
I suppose I always think of challenges as something wonderful. I actually love challenges, and I really relish them because it usually is a chance for me to go in a different direction than I ever thought I would. So I work a lot with other pro makeup artists, which I really love. I have done a lot of stuff with Sarah Tano, who's the makeup artist for Lady Gaga. And that has been fantastic because she'll throw something at me. Like recently, okay, well, there's a few. So back in, was it 2018 or no, 2016, Sarah got in touch with me and said, Phyllis, do you have a design that can be pulled off really quickly and leave the makeup underneath undisturbed? And I was like, And I said, well, I have this design that it's only attached on these 2 areas. So you should be able to peel it off and the makeup remain perfect underneath. So this was actually what we started working on for Lady Gaga's Superbowl appearance that she did when she was the main act of the Superbowl in 2016. We were still like working on it and sending, samples back and forth. And like, no, she wants this color crystals. Can you redo it with these crystals? And we sent it off on a Friday, and the Super Bowl was on the Saturday. So I know. And the only people that can get it that quick are FedEx. So it was like, okay, FedEx, you gotta do this. And, she did get them on the Saturday, and it was like, oh, phew. But then, there's always a thing with celebrities, and I know this from my own experience, that you can talk about an idea and you get everything ready and everyone like busts a gut trying to get everything ready just perfect. And then it can just not feel right. and they say, no, look, we're going to play it safe and we're going to do this. So I didn't know. I knew that she had gotten these fancy Swarovski eye wing things, but I didn't know if she was going to use them. So I stayed up to like 3 a.m. UK time to find out if they were used, and on Twitter, because that's kind of, I think, the most immediate social media thing, and just waiting to find out if she used them or not. And I started seeing people saying, "Oh, wow, look at that beautiful sparkly thing that she's got around her eyes." It was like, yes, yes, yes. So after, I mean, I think her performance lasted like 16 minutes or something. And after about 8 minutes, she goes off stage and she returns like a minute later, and she doesn't have these things on anymore. And I remember people going, "What? Like, what? Yeah, yeah." People were like really confused. Like, how did that happen? How could she completely change her makeup look in like a minute? So we kind of made makeup history doing that, which was just fantastic.
So you learnt a lot from that, in the way that something you thought potentially couldn't be possible was possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Phyllis, would you say that your challenges are mainly design-led rather than running the business and growing the business?
Oh, well, that's been a big challenge too. Of course. Of
And what's
course.
been the biggest challenge running the business so far? And what do you think you've learnt?
Well, I think in the first 6 months of trying to run a business, I really realized, like, oh my God, I didn't realize how perfectly I was cast as a makeup artist. Because as a makeup artist, all you have to do is you get a brief and you turn up at the job, and then you go home and, wait for the next one, right? There's really not that much responsibility. It's really nice. You get involved in something for, I mean, I only did fashion. I didn't do film. So, my commitment to various things was a few days, maybe a week at the most. So, I mean, in terms of commitment and responsibility, I mean, of course, I'm really responsible when I'm on the job and getting everything ready for each thing. But at least to the extent that my career, makeup career, evolved to, it was pretty straightforward. Someone else was doing invoicing for me. I had an agent. They were negotiating everything for me. So I had to really learn a lot, really a lot.
And you have a team supporting you now doing bits and bobs, do you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I use an accountant, and I have
Yeah.
a business advisor, and I have a few of my core team that help me make the designs, and they're all trained up of how to use the machines and how to weed, and I'm always the one that designs it. And I IP register everything before it's launched, and just everything about running a business is difficult.
Well, it is, isn't it? And I think the IP side is massive. And that, I think, is one of the challenges as you grow as a brand, is that you get people who think, oh, I'll take a slice of that. I'll just tweak it and adapt it, and off they go, which is soul destroying in a way. Phyllis, on the sustainability side with your designs, which are everybody divine, you've just got to check them out. They are works of art that you put on your face. Are there challenges around that? I mean, I was reading recently that you were looking at the fabric of cork, but how are you going to be able to create that delicate, the sort of delicate, intricate side of the business? Is that going to be a challenge, or do you think it's something that is going to be relatively swift and easy to adapt to?
Well, we always try to use as much sustainable packaging as we can. So I only use like recycled cardboard for the packaging, and I use eco-friendly cello sleeves and just like paper instructions. So that side is as eco-friendly as we can possibly be. In terms of the materials I use, unfortunately, the material that everyone loves most that we use is this amazing shiny rainbow stuff, which unfortunately is a polyurethane, which isn't so bad in terms of all the plastics, but not great. And so I did really want to try to find a material that was really, really beautiful, but that was sustainable. And I have been to several sustainable fabric fairs to try to research this, and I found this cork material, which I thought was just so beautiful because the natural patterns in cork are just amazing. So I made a design out of that, and um, it's cut out of this cork material. It's on a paper which is made from it's completely recycled and biodegradable. So I was really happy that I was able to at least do one design that was completely sustainable, and I'm looking to do more.
Phyllis, how has COVID affected you and your team and working together? I was reading that, it sounded lovely that you cook lunch for your team, which must create a real cohesion. But how are you all coping with our current COVID-19 existence?
Yeah. Well, for the first 4 years, Faceless was operating out of a room in my house, which is the same room I'm talking to you from. So when lockdown happened, we all worked together for a few days and figured out exactly what I would need to bring back home with me. And Faceless operations basically happened from the same room where they started for, 4 years before. So I brought back all the materials, all the packaging, all the designs, and my team was helping me do all the admin side, and I would just place all the orders, fill all the orders from home. And we worked like that from March until restrictions were lifted, like in July. We're sort of now doing a combination of working from home and going to the office, and that's working well. And if there's another lockdown, we'll probably do the same thing, and I'll bring everything back home again and, fill orders from home.
That's fantastic. Phyllis, what do you think you've learned about yourself with your business?
I've learned, I'm not somebody who likes to be really bossy, but I have learned that I have to be a boss. And that has been quite difficult. And to learn how to do that well, and so, and especially I think since COVID happened and, we're all kind of working remotely and then we do bits together. I've learned that I have to be really on top of what everyone is doing and learn how to do that without sounding, to do that in a kind way. And to do it in a helpful way and a collaborative way and a cooperative way. So, that my team feels like we are genuinely working as a team rather than, and that I do feel that I feel as though we're a team. It's not like me, and then all these people under me. I work, well, probably like 4 times as many hours as my team, but that's fine. I've always worked like that. So it's no new thing for me. I am very compassionate about my team. I really love them. I try to appreciate every single thing that they do for me. And if something goes wrong, I try to say, okay, let's try to work out, how this happened, and let's try to make sure it doesn't happen again.
That leads me on to my question, Phyllis, of how do you recover from mistakes?
Yeah, I do try to think of everything. And that comes all the way back from the way I used to work as a makeup artist. I think because I'm naturally really, really forgetful. I'm really forgetful. I'm a real scatterbrain. So in order to counteract that, I have to really make lists. And before, if I was preparing for a really complicated makeup job or I'm doing like this elaborate body painting, whatever, I was like no one can talk to me for 6 hours while I'm preparing because I have these lists going on in my head. And if somebody distracts me for even 1 second, I'll be like, oh, what was I doing? What, God, what was that thing I had to remember? I'm just awful. So
you forget your mistakes. Is that how you recover? A natural forgetting process?
I have to work like 10 times as hard to make sure that I've tried to think of everything that could possibly go wrong. And I think sometimes, like when we're preparing for a specific job or an order, and I might remember, okay, this went wrong. So I'll be sending like 20 emails, like, please remember to do this one thing because this happened, this went wrong last time.
Yeah, I know one learns, from one's mistakes, don't you? Whatever one does and it backfires, you think, I'm never, ever, ever going to do that again.
Yeah, exactly.
So Phyllis, moving on to the quickfire round before our chocolate break.
Yay!
Just a simple answer to these 4 little things: optimist or pessimist?
Oh, optimist. Oh, for sure.
Introvert, extrovert, or ambivert?
Ooh, what's the ambivert?
Sort of
That's probably me.
melange, a mix.
Yeah, definitely yeah, probably I'm more of an introvert. Yeah.
Interesting.
But okay, introvert with a tiny bit of ambivert.
With a twist.
Yeah.
Perfectionist or
Oh,
non-perfectionist?
perfectionist. Oh my God.
Early bird or night owl?
Oh, night owl.
I knew you were going to say that. I thought you were a lady of the night in a
Oh,
nice way. In a nice way, Phyllis.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
have you got your chocolate bar by your side?
I do. And
So-
amazingly, it's remained unopened this whole time.
Yes, so is mine. It's a whopping 150 grams I've got in my hands. So the producer, lovely Chris, who remains silent because we're not in a studio anymore, he doesn't have this. But anyway, Phyllis and I will be tucking in. And this is a Lindt Le Grand 34% hazelnut chocolate bar. And I was with Lindt. They were real movers and shakers in the chocolate world. And Rodolph, I don't know if I've pronounced that right, Lindt, invented a process called conching back in 1879. And in layman's terms, that's how you get that sort of melt in the mouth sensation. And it influences the flavour of the chocolate too. So Lindt actually was a real mover and a shaker. And artisan chocolatiers, the bean to bar guys, have developed the conching process, and some conch up to 72 hours. So Phyllis, tell us why you've picked this bar as I unwrap it and tuck in.
Okay, I'm going to unwrap mine too.
What's the association with this extremely decadent chocolate bar?
Is it decadent?
Well, it's whopping great hazelnuts and smothered in milk chocolate. And I would say that one would probably have to get the weights out afterwards.
Well, I do quite like fancy chocolate bars, but in terms of what I can get like at the supermarket, I think this is quite a luxurious chocolate bar. And I love nuts. I'm lucky I don't have a nut allergy because I do love all nuts. I think it is really nice on the tongue. It melts really nicely, and I really like the contrast between the very smooth chocolate and the crunchy hazelnuts.
I was going to say it's the crunch, isn't it? Funnily enough, our guest on the previous episode, Perry, picked a dark hazelnut bar, funnily enough. So we've had nuts and chocolate I love. Phyllis, what are your thoughts on the words success and failure? What do they mean to you?
Well, it's really interesting. There was a phase, our sales were really slow, and we had just taken on this office in East London, and things were just, they just weren't progressing at all. And I was actually thinking of selling face lace because I just thought, it's just not working. It's just not working. And, it was that summer in August when I was away that Saratano, who's Lady Gaga's makeup artist, called up and said, Phyllis, I need to have a really big chat with you. There's something really important I want to talk to you about. And that was the call to collaborate and make bespoke face lace designs for House Labs, which was Lady Gaga new makeup line that was launching a year later. So, just goes to show that sometimes when you think things have hit rock bottom, that's how it happened for me. When you think, okay, I've done everything I possibly can, and we have all these great endorsements, and still it's not enough. Things just aren't really happening. That something happens.
It is. I mean, that sort of flick of a switch, isn't it?
Exactly.
It is incredible. Skipping on to the well-being, Phyllis, as you munch away on the unhealthy bar of chocolate. How and where does stress affect you?
Well, sorry,
she's disappeared into the chocolate.
I've always been somebody who needed to have their own little world. And even as a kid, the teachers would always write in the report cards, she could be quite bright, like about me.
Yeah.
But she just daydreams all the time. And that's like me to a T. I can happily just stare at a wall for an hour because my mind is just going. It's just like off in some fantasy land,
So is that how you cope with stress then? You daydream?
Yeah, I think I just go into Phyllis World, whatever that is.
Sounds a good technique. Perhaps you should be sharing that on Instagram.
No.
Phyllis's daydreaming.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love to draw, and that's my thing, and when lockdown happened and Julie and I discussed having his father come to stay with us because, the idea of him being on his own for 3 months was just a horrifying idea.
Hmm.
I said, okay, you know, it's going to be quite strange, but I think as long as we all have our own zones in the house, it'll be fine. So, and, we have a fairly big house. So as long as we all had our zones where we could sort of feel independent from each other, it would work. But that sort of independent thing is really important for me. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I usually stay up late to work. Because I love working at night. It's really quiet. I know no one's going to disturb me. And I can just go into Phyllis Land, or Phyllis World, and just like daydream about, new ideas or just garbage, really. I don't know. Just, and also I find that when I'm designing, that's when the best ideas happen, is really late at night, almost when I'm too tired to think properly.
When do you sleep then, Phyllis?
Oh, I sleep from sort of like 2 a.m. onwards. I sleep, yeah, usually I'm going to sleep about 2 a.m., sometimes 3 a.m., sometimes 4 a.m., especially with lockdown, because, I don't really need to be anywhere. So I get up at like 10,
And Phyllis, how important is well-being for you?
I eat really well with my husband. He's half Italian. He's a great cook. He is a good gardener. We're getting stuff from our garden. So we eat really well. And it's something I've been interested in for a long time. I was doing lots of yoga, but not much anymore. I do a few online classes here and there. But I would say when you have a focus where you're very concerned with somebody else's well-being, you do tend to not spend so much time thinking about yourself.
It's important, that balance, isn't it?
It is really, really important. But yeah, so far, so far so good with Ray, who's my 102-year-old father-in-law, who just celebrated his 102nd birthday on September 14th, pretty amazing. And that's been an incredible experience as well, living with somebody.
He obviously's got the knack for well-being.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I was reading actually about awe walking, and apparently one needs to go on a walk which fills you with awe. And Trinity College Dublin and the University of California looked into walks with a sense of awe, so with waterfalls or with a sort of physical landscape. And they asked, what was quite interesting was they asked two groups to go out into nature, one on a sort of casual walk and the other one on a specific sort of going to see some amazing sight. And they found out that the people on the casual stroll, despite doing more walking, actually didn't have the positive emotive state and just as much compassion and gratitude as the people who went on the shorter walks, but had these incredible vistas that they saw. Interesting. And they were saying that they thought it brought people outwards rather than inwards. But I mean, I certainly walk every day. You don't do anything like that for your...
No, not really.
Keep your joints moving.
No. I have been going into the office, as they say, so I'm doing that. But no, not really. No, it's kind of bad.
Well, it sounds as if your husband is helping you with the well-being. And if you get the well-being tips from Ray, you'll be rocking along. Phyllis, do you have a book or a song that you would like to share with our listeners at all?
I love books. I'm just reading James Baldwin because I've never read him before.
I haven't read him. What book would you recommend that we picked up of his?
I'm just finishing And the Train is Gone, or something like that.
Okay.
About
so we need to check that.
Yeah, he's an amazing writer. He writes in a style which one of those authors that makes it look easy. Like his writing style is not complicated, but it's very precise and descriptive. Just beautiful writing.
I'm definitely going to put that on the top of my reading list.
Yeah, he's written quite a few books, and he's somebody I always heard of. Like he I think his heyday of writing was sort of the 50s and 60s, perhaps 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe. Yeah, just an amazing author.
what advice would you give people thinking of starting up their own business?
Well, I started my business like not with any kind of plan. And now, how many years later now? 8 years later, I can see that probably would have been a really good idea.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. I set mine up with no plan. It's like, oh my God.
The one thing I had going for me is that I knew my market. For sure I knew my market, which was, the pro makeup market, because I had lived that for 35 years, so I knew it. And I think that's critical. You got to really know your market and know where the gap is. But finances and stuff, I had no idea. I had no idea how to do costing. I still don't know how to do an Excel sheet. And I still mess them all up if someone gives them to me.
I think, though, Phyllis, the advice would be that people do get a grip on the financials, isn't it? I mean, I think margins are absolutely key. Like you, I set up my chocolate business with no idea about my margins, and they were huge when I set up. I just thought, I'll double the money. And I was really lucky. But then obviously there comes a point where you can't keep doubling the money, and therefore the margins don't really sort of add up.
Yeah.
But very, very sound advice on the knowing your market. So, Phyllis, where have you had to have hope in your life? It can be business or personal. And where have you had to have patience?
I think I always have hope. Yeah, I think that's a really natural part of me.
From your optimism.
I'm very optimistic. If you give me a problem, I will try to figure out a solution.
And patience?
I'm very patient.
You
I'm
are?
really patient.
Really?
Yeah, I really am. I think
so where have you had to have patience, though, for something to come off or for something to happen? What have you got an example of that?
Yes. Well, yeah, when we first started to work with factories, one of the first factories we worked with, they had a more laissez-faire kind of attitude. And we were hitting deadlines, and they were like, oh, yeah, we'll have the sample tomorrow. And there'd be like 2 weeks later. And we'd be like, where's the sample? Where's the sample? And they're like, oh, yeah, we had a few problems. We're like, why are you telling us you had problems now? So, that was very difficult to sometimes work with other people who were a bit freer with saying that they could get something done when they actually, were unsure of it, but didn't want to share that information. Whereas I'm always really honest. I'm not somebody who will blag something ever. If I can't do something, here. I'll say straight off, no, I really don't think I can do that. Or I will say, I need a few weeks to work that out, and then I'll let you know if I can do it. I never, ever say, oh, yeah, no problem. So that was quite a shock and something I had to have patience with.
Phyllis, where can the listeners find Face Lace? What, if you'd like to share the website and social media, I'm going to pop in that there's a very good video of Phyllis at work, which is just incredible, at coalart.com, COLART.com. But Phyllis, where else can they find you and your goodies?
Yeah, thank you. We have a website, which is www.face-lace.com. We have an Instagram account, which is face_lace. We have Facebook, we have Twitter.
And where can they buy from you online, Phyllis? Is that where they get your makeup? Lace?
Yes, you can buy it from our website, which is, as I say, face-lace.com. Yeah. Or we have some stockists in America, Germany, France.
And they can presumably find your stockists on your website too, can't they?
Yes.
Yeah. I'd love to thank you, Phyllis, so much for coming on the show. It has been a real eye-opener into an industry that I had absolutely no idea about. And, to hear the incredible people that you've met and your experiences is just phenomenal, with gems for us all to share. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very honored that you would ask me, and it just gives me really wonderful feelings that, from all those years ago when we met, that something like this came out of it. And I know when I'm working, I listen to podcasts all the time.
Thank you, Phyllis, very much. So anyway, before I go, here is my book recommendation and quote for this episode. The book is absolutely just one of my faves. It's Life Lessons from a Brain Surgeon by Dr. Rahun. Jandial, and it is just incredible. You've really just got to read it. He talks about brain health, and I heard him talk at the Life Lessons event last year at Sunday Times, and he is a top brain surgeon, and his book just rocks. So highly recommend that. And then the quote is from John Milton: "The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven." A huge thank you for finding the show. I hope you enjoyed the chat. Don't forget to subscribe to get the latest episode. And if you're enjoying the show, it would be truly fab if you could rate and review it. Any book recommendations, quotes, songs can be found in the show notes and on the website too. Until the next time, however tough the times get, keep that inner sparkle you have.
Hope and Patience with Amelia Rope. Join the conversation at hopeandpatience.co.uk. Find Amelia on Facebook at Hope and Patience, or on Twitter and Instagram at Amelia_Rope.